Hello and hopefully welcome to a autumnal evening here in London, and I'm back in recording mode again, and I'm going to try and add a couple more map examples to N=37, which was all about zombies if you remember last time. So I've just changed the solution name at the moment to N=38, and what I'd like to do is I would like to dive straight in, and if you remember last time, the view model we worked with, hopefully it'll open up. It had a location, notify property change with a lat and long. It had a zombie, which had a name, a location, and it is male property. And then our first view model just had a Helen and a Keith, and it just sat there doing that. And then it had a move command as well, just to show some animation. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to refactor that using ReSharper. Off it goes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take first view model, going to copy it across, make second view model, and what I'd like to do as a second step in mapping. Oops, it looks like I didn't quite save that correctly. But what I'd like to do for my second view model is I'd just like to come down to one zombie, and I'd like to show how to do two-way binding so that you can actually manipulate the zombie or the annotation on the map from the view back into the view model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the second view model and I'm going to just drop it down to one zombie who I may as well call, let's do it, it's Han Solo. Yeah, so it's going to be Han Solo, the zombie. Oh, what have I started renaming here? I'm just going to do it in second view model. I'll leave Han Solo in wherever, Dartford or wherever this was, this thing. And I'll remove the move command. So I've got this one solo zombie. And the only thing I'd really like to change is I just kind of want some feedback about where this zombie is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the zombie class. And I'm going to override to string so that I can dump out where this zombie is. And what I'll do is I'll do a string.format and I'll put in the name and the location. So that's name, comma, location. So that's going to give me that. And to make that work as well, I have to put a toString in the location. So string.format. And this one I'll do brackets 1, but I don't want that many decimal places, so make it 5 decimal places for each. Oops, 0. And that's Latin 1. So that's going to give me some debug output. And then just to save time, I'll just change where the app starts rather than doing a splash screen or a choose button screen to make it start. But I should be able to build my core and just check that I've got my configuration set so that everything builds good. So now in the UI I want to do the same sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take hold of first view as it was, and I'm going to copy it across to second view. And you can see here we're going to have a second view. Just going to rename a few things, get these things going. Obviously I won't have a Keith and a Helen anymore, but all I'm doing here is literally just changing words away. So if I let me just rename a few more things. So all I've done is cut and paste. My favorite mechanism. This is going to be a Han annotation. And I'll make the center on Han. So yeah, all I've done is I have bound my view model using exactly the same delegate, exactly the same annotation view, and exactly the same annotation, so kind of the code behind the MVC object that's going to be there for the zombie. And I built that, and so hopefully if we run this guy up, hopefully it runs and builds, then it should build across onto the Mac. And we should, if I'm lucky, okay, so type VNC viewer went down, we should be able to see that running. So I'll just type in my very secure password, and that should get us across. And we should, well, I'm afraid the build system's ahead of us. And running over now on the Mac is this second view that kind of has a button, only has one zombie. Obviously the button doesn't do anything at the moment. So I just like to keep extending that. And what I said I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to manipulate the zombie from the map. So to do that, what you have to do is you have to find the view, the MK annotation view that actually corresponds to the zombie. And we've got some dead code down here, which I'll just remove. And in fact, if you just want to make it draggable, then it's as simple as pin.draggable equals true, at which point it'll become draggable. Now there are a couple of ways you can then get notified about dragging events. One of them is in the delegate. There is a method you can override called change drag state, and if you do that, then you'll get notified, you know, when each annotation view is being dragged from one state to another and when it's being moved across. So that gives you a chance to hook into that. But the easier way is actually that when the dragging has finished, then what happens is that the annotation, this kind of MVC object behind the annotation view, gets called back. And what it gets called back in is this property that you overrode. So it's called coordinate. So that gives you a chance to, you know, fire back to the view model, to the Mvvm object, what happened. So what we're going to do is we know that we're going to get called back in this set method from the annotation view. So what we're going to do is we're just going to override the backing field, give it a backing field for this property, and when we get called on coordinate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire an event. Now the event that I want to fire is the one that the view model is going to be listening to. So the view model is binding to location. So the event, and I know this is going to confuse people, it's called location changed. So this is going to be an event handler. Location change. And what you should now be able to do is just take hold of it, var handler equals location changed. And if anyone's listening, then you can fire it. So handler this, event args .empty. And that should just get updated automatically because we've already got here this code set. Just to stop loops, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace our use of the variable there with this guy, because the view, the annotation view, is being notified of changes via this. So let's just talk through that again. What happens is we've got a second view model. Second view model just has one zombie in it called hands over. We then have an annotation that corresponds to that zombie, and that annotation is bound down here. The location property of that annotation is bound to the view model's location. So what then happens is when the view model, if the view model was to change the zombie's location, then it would fire through this location and it would update the UI this way. If the view model, if the annotation view updates the coordinate going this way, then what happens is the view model gets notified via location changed. Okay, I've confused myself, so I've no doubt confused you as well. But let's just see that working. I'm going to do one more thing as well, which is I'm just going to do if coordinate this could be null, so let's just do if value dot equals location. So if it just equals the existing, then I'm not going to do any update here because that would be pointless. And to get that working, we have to go back to location, and we're going to override equals. So let's just do that. Let's just do this the quick way. Var L right hand side equals obj as location. If L right hand side equals null, return false. Otherwise return L right hand side dot lat equals lat, and L right hand side dot long equals long. So that's just going to be a quick equals, and because we've overridden equals, we should also do get hash code as well. So I'll just override that by doing that dot get hash code plus long dot get hash code. So that's a quick, okay, it's just floating point arguments. That's a quick override of that. And one more thing I want to do just to show that we are actually, binding genuinely, is I'm also going to bind something on the UI. So I'm going to just take advantage of having this button there, and I'm going to bind the button's label, which is its title pseudo property, to hand's location as well. So if hand's location gets updated, then the button should display. Right, that's enough talking. And it's not that many lines of code. I've hardly changed anything. The key things being, again, that I've kind of changed the annotation to be draggable, and then I've just hooked in some events around this coordinate. But once this is built, if it has built, we should be able to run it. And then I'm hoping that you'll see, that we've got two-way binding going on between view and view model. So over to the UI it goes. Starts running up, and unless I made a big mistake. Right, so there's our zombie. If I click on him, I say, failing to, and you can see I drag him. And if I drop him somewhere, you should hopefully see that at the top here, in this button, you should hopefully see that it updated. So if I do that again, it's just have to actually click on him. Then when I drop him, you can see the location at the data top updates. If we move into France, you can see it's a bigger movement. So that is two-way updating. Simple enough. With the, so if you've got something where you need to put pins on the map, that's the way of doing it. What's the next thing we should do in maps? The next thing would be a collection of objects. So I'm going to take a second view model, and I'm going to create a third one. And let's take this view model and let's push it across. And what we're going to do is, instead of having a zombie called Han or whatever it is that we called our zombie, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to add an observable collection of zombies. So let's add an observable collection of zombie. And this is, what's a collection of zombies called? A horde? A yarp of zombies. It's obviously a yarp of zombies. So that's going to be our yarp of zombies. And to start with, I'll just set it to a new, oops, them equals. I'll set it to a new observable collection of zombies. And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a timer, and in that timer I'm going to add some new zombies. So let's do that. Let's have a private timer. Timer's obviously our background threaded object, so we've got to make sure if we're dealing with an observable collection, we marshal it to the UI thread. And let's also have a random, so that we can do some random things on our timer. Right, so with that done, let's now take our random equals new random, and let's take our timer equals new timer. And this is going to be an on tick. We don't need any state, so I'll pass in null. And what I'll do is I'll pass in a due time of every second and a period of every second. We then need to actually do something in on tick, so let's get over that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to marshal onto the UI thread. Let's do that. So that's available by doing invoke on main thread. And then what I'd like to do is, depending on what I feel like, depending on how I am, I'd either like to create a new zombie, or I'd like to do something perhaps more useful. So let's make sure we've always got one zombie. So let's put this code back in. We're going to have a var zombie equals new zombie. I'm afraid they're going to get called zombie plus the number of them that's currently there. So this is yarp.count. So and they're always going to start from the nest. So let's just do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to add that into our nest by doing yarp.add zombie. So I'm just going to put that into a method called add zombie. That's cool. So that's our add zombie. And then what I can do back in this on tick is I'm going to get hold of a number. Var p equals random. Random dot get next. This will give us a number between. I want a double, so I'm going to have a double between 0 and 1. And what I'm going to do is if p is less than 10, less than 0.1, sorry, so it's going to be a 1 in 10 chance, then I'm going to add a zombie. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my existing zombies by what's there. So what I'm going to do is for each var zombie in yarp, I'm going to do zombie.location equals, and this is going to be a new location object. And what I'd like to do is probably I should create another random, so let's do it. Zombies always move kind of diagonally because that's the way they feel, so let's do it this way. Var m equals, what I'll do is a underscore random dot next double minus 0.5, so that'll give me a number between 0 and 1. It's going to be quite big movements, these zombies, they're going to be quite fast things. So let's actually just tone it down a bit. Let's give them multiplication by 0.01. Still fast zombies, but a bit better. And what I'll do is a lat equals the existing location, zombie.location.lat plus m, and the long is going to be similarly. So these are always going to kind of move together. Maybe I should do it as a var L1 and var L2, and that way they'll be independent and they might just move in all sorts of random ways. So that will update our zombie, and because location is a property, like a property changed, you can see erase property changed and MVX notify property changed, then that will mean that it gets propagated. So I just snipped a bit out of the video there because a Skype call came in, sorry about that. I think what I was saying is that this gives us our view model that's going to update on a tick and should give us something quite useful to see on the screen. So that's our view model. Hopefully it'll build. So with that built, let's get on with the view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take second view and paste it to become third view. And I did forget that I want to make my third view now to be my opening screen, just because it's the quick way we're doing this. And so what I'm going to do is take third view, just edit it across so that it's got lots of thirds instead of seconds. And then what I need to do once I've got this working a little is obviously I've no longer got a Han or a Helen or a Keith, so I'm going to have to get rid of that. I'm just going to hack this so that it's centered on London, 51, and this will be 0, and we'll give it to we'll give it a much bigger. We'll give it a 50-kilometer radius, and that at this point, hopefully, let me just correct that to third view model. Gives us a basic UI setup. I'll remove the button as well, we don't need that. So that's our map, but at the moment we don't have any bindings to the actual zombies. So to get the bindings working, what we want to do is we want to just use a collection. And there is already quite a few examples in the MvvmCross of how to bind collections. And I did a blog post back in July about how to extend that to maps. And so what I did was just put together this quick little gist, and there's a blog post that explains how I put that together as well. And basically what it does is it just exposes an item source as an IEnumerable, and then it subscribes to things like iNotify collection changed on that item source. So let me get that gist back up. Hopefully I haven't lost it. And I'm just going to cut and paste that gist, my abstract helper class. going to cut and paste that into my project. And hopefully we should be able to use it. So let's, in third view, let us see what happens if you paste that in. And there's a few enumerables and things that need to be in there, and there'll be a link. And hopefully we can get this up and running as we subscribe. Trace, just a few things to pull in, and dictionary, and then there must be still this link. Okay, so that gives us our annotation manager, and I'll just put it in its own file. And the annotation manager is really easy to use, so nothing to be afraid of here at all. All it's got is an item source that gets set, and then it listens for events on that item source. So for example, if there's an item that comes in saying I've added some things, then it calls add, and add essentially calls mapview.add annotation. So it's pretty similar to what you've seen all along. So that's going to be our base for a collection. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to inherit from it. So let's just pull in a new class, and this is going to be our public class, our zombie manager. And this is MvX annotation manager. And it's got a couple, it's got a constructor you need to add, and then it's got an override you need to implement. And so the constructor just passes the map view down to the base class. And the create annotation, well, to do this, what we really want to do is just return a zombie annotation as we've been using all along. Yeah. There is just, return new. There is one thing we need to do to our zombie annotation, which hopefully I'll remember, which is that we do want to we do need to hook into the location of that zombie, because previously we've been using the view bindings to update that location, whereas now we want to actually do it more actively. So let's there's our zombie manager. Let's just hook that up a little bit better. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an instance of that zombie manager, private zombie manager, and we're going to new it here. Zombie manager equals new zombie manager, map view. And what we're going to do is we are going to put a binding for it. So set.bind, and it's for the zombie manager, for its item source, to the view models collection of zombies, which we called a YARP. So that is our zombie manager, and the binding's all set up. The only thing we haven't done at this stage is we haven't actually got our zombie hooked up in location terms anywhere. So you can see here is our zombie annotation, and all we do with it in the constructor is we do that. We don't actually set up any binding for the location. So there are a few ways you can set up the binding, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and use weak referencing to do it. And so what I'll do is I'm going to bind to its location. So I'm going to do a weak subscribe, and this is just going to be on the zombie. And so this is going. Did I spell zombie wrong? This is going to be on the location property, and it's going to be so this is going to take an s, e. Property changed event args, and it's going, oops, there it comes with some IntelliSense for me. What it's going to do is when we get a location change, I want to update location, so I'll call update location like this, and obviously on first subscribe we also want to call update location. So in update location, what I do is I do location equals underscore zombie dot location. That's all I've done. This is a two-way binding, so the zombies will still be draggable, etc. But you should see, okay, this is actually telling me I can do it as an expression. You can see that is then updated. So most of that code is still the same as it was before. Hopefully this runs. Does it build first? So it builds. Let's see whether or not it runs. Starting up a new instance over on the Mac. Hopefully it starts up. So, did I forget to do anything? Here's our map. Okay, I may have put the location in a bad place. There's our first zombie. Oops, the zombies disappeared. Are they... Let me zoom out. Are they disappearing in bad places? Am I... Okay, so we definitely saw a zombie, and then he vanished, or did he? Oh, look, he's going across the world. Maybe I have made them a little bit too mobile. Okay, so it looks like my zombies are heading east for some reason. So maybe I got my maths wrong. Let me come back out of this. Let us take a look at where our zombies are in the third view model. And when I do the location, let me make this much smaller. Ah, there's my problem. I added my lat and my long together, so that was the problem. Right, so sorry about that. Hopefully we should, and let me also go back and I'll change the third view so that it's centered where we are, 51.4 and 0.4. We should, if I run that back up, actually see a bit more sensible zombie behavior. Sorry about that, they were zooming off because I was confusing my lats and my longs. So hopefully, if this starts up, then we should see a bit more sensible behavior. So there's our zombie. And actually these zombies are misbehaving a little bit, but you can see hopefully that we're getting more zombies added to the picture, and they are definitely moving around. If I pick one up, it's too hard to pick one up because of the animation happening at the same time. If they weren't animating and I picked one up, then I would be able to move it, but unfortunately the location's happening underneath, so I can't do that anymore. But you can see hopefully that our little nest of zombies is growing, and hopefully you can see it's animating a bit. There are definitely problems with this, so if you can see if I start moving my map. Oh, well no, actually it's alright when I move my map, but you can see if I zoom my map, then it's a bit flickery when I zoom my map. So there are definitely issues with this UI that you'd want to fix. But as a basic kind of setup of, here's my observable collection of zombies moving around the screen, hopefully you can see that working. Okay, so that's a collection. It does make use of this kind of annotation manager, which is, lots of boilerplate code. But if you do want to see how to handle, these type of collections, it's a pretty easy way of doing it. It's not too much code to put through. Right, so the final thing I'd like to do with maps is let me get a fourth view model. For the fourth view model, I think I'd quite like, well, I can stick with a collection. So with the final view model, I'd like to, actually no, let me not base it on the third one. Let me base it on something like the first one again. And just because what we're going to do, what we're going to do for this one is I'd just like to show you that annotations aren't the only things you can do on maps. There's all sorts of other things you can bind to as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a fourth view model. And in the fourth view model, I'd just like to have a location, really. I don't need any zombies this time, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to remove all zombies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a location. And this is going to be my center. I really managed to do that badly, that template. Let's try that again. So what I'm going to have is a location. Really losing the power of typing. Location. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that location to be on Gravesend Center. Don't know why we've chosen Gravesend as the center of the world, but we have. It's quite appropriate, I suppose, really. I hadn't thought of that. And what I'd then like to do is I would like to have a command which is going to say, update center. And what I'll probably do is I'll also have a couple of string fields. So let's do that. PMBX string. Actually, let's do it as double. That. And another one. Right. So what we're going to do is when we get called update data center, what we're going to do is we're going to copy those lat and long fields into a new location. So lat equals lat, and long, this time not equal to lat because that was very confusing, equal to long. So there is our view model. Hopefully you understood it. It's got an update center command, it's got a lat and a long kind of doubles which will just bind to text boxes, and it's got a location. Those are the things we're going to put in there. Right, so what we're going to do now is go back to our first view in the UI. We've got to remember that we're going to update this so it displays our view model. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy first view across. And we will do a fourth view. Again, we've got all of this kind of cut and paste stuff that we're going to remove. Obviously, if you're doing a proper project, don't cut and paste everything. This is just because I'm in a hurry demonstrating this to you. Normally I wouldn't cut and paste, honest. So what we're going to do is we have got our fourth view. We're not going to have any annotations on it. What we'd like to do is we'd like to actually bind this thing, the set region call. We've kind of been hard coding all along. And we'd like to bind that instead. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have a button, and I'm going to have a couple of text fields. Lat equals new UI text field, and this is going to be new rectangle f, and it's going to be 0, 0. No, what do I want this? I want this 10, 50, 130, 40, say, and I will add that. And I think there's a way of also saying it should take input of numbers. Is it an input? What is it? Keyboard type equals UI keyboard type decimal pad, please. Okay, so that's how that's going to be set up, and then long will be the same, just with a different position. So this is going to be 10, 50, so actually I want this one to be at like 160 or something. It won't be perfectly laid out, but at least it will be somewhere on the screen reasonable. And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to bind some of these things. So the button, we're going to bind to the, what was the command called? Update center command. The lat, I'd like to bind its text two-way. Text is its default property to the view model's lat, and the long I'd like to bind to the view model's long. And then the final thing that we really want to do is we want to merge everything together so that we can call this guy, this set region call, when the location changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new type of object. We haven't got any zombies in here, so I'm going to get rid of the zombie. Sorry. I'll leave it there, it's only dead code. What we'd like to do is we would like to have a public class, and we'll call this the region manager. And what we're going to do is we will create this region manager and we'll give it a map view. So private read-only map view, mk map view underscore map view. And we'll initialize that from its constructor. And then what we'll do is we'll give this a property, because this is all it needs to do to participate in binding. And this is going to be its location property. We'll call it center. And what we're going to do is we're going to return map view dot center. We'll obviously have to do some casting to get that working in a moment. We'll do that. And when we do set, what we're going to do is we're going to set the map view center using this type of code. So it's going to do value.lat, value.long, and we'll do the distance as defaults as well. So we need to return a location here. So what we're going to do is a new location, which is going to use underscore mapView.center. Oh, center's the wrong thing to use. It's not. It's center coordinate.lat. So center is actually the views center within the 320 by 480 or whatever. So not the map center. So be careful of that one. So that should be on my thing, except these are probably floats. No, okay, location. That equals. We'll get there eventually. And long equals. And that should be a curly brace there. Hopefully I've got that right. So we've got a region manager now, and it's got a public property called center. And what that means is we can add a private member of our class called region manager, underscore region manager. The reason we're adding it as a private member is because if we don't have it at kind of class scope, then it will get garbage collected and it won't get data bound. So, you know, if you're not adding it as kind of a feature to the map, which is what we do with our annotations, or you're not adding it as a UI view, which is what we do with our UI views like buttons and things, then you have to do something else. That's what we're doing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a new region manager, which is going to take the map view as its argument, and then we can just bind that region manager. So what we do is come down here, set.bind region manager underscore region manager to the view model's location. Alright, so there's going to be no zombies in this demo, sorry. But hopefully, in fact I'm going to get rid of these zombies just as they will confuse us otherwise that they're in this class. So we're going to get rid of the delegate. I won't have a delegate at all in this class. And hopefully you can see that's how this is all gets set up. So let's see if this builds. Always a surprise when it does. And it seems to. And then what I'm going to do is just start anew. And hopefully we'll see it come up on this page. And we should, I hope, see that. So here is our map. The moment it's centered on 0, 0, which doesn't sound quite right. Let's just see. If we choose to center it on 12.8 and 25.8 and do move, it doesn't do anything. So what have I done wrong? Let's find out. So it's saying in my warnings, failed to create target for 2. So it's really having trouble with one of my bindings. So let's just take a look at this. So the reason it's failing is because it doesn't know what property to bind on region manager, which is reasonable enough. So the property it needed to bind on region manager was the region center. Yeah, the reason it didn't need it for these guys is because button has a default property, and the default property is touch up inside, it's an event. And lat and long are text fields, and they have a default property that's text. But a region manager, you know, it's a brand new thing, doesn't have a default property. If you wanted to add a default property, you could do that in your setup. Yeah, there's an override here called register fill events. Let's see, fill binding names, and what you can do here is you can do add or overwrite, and so this is for a type of, what's it called, a region manager. It's going to be a nested type, so it'll give me a type of region manager. What you can say is that I would like to have that as a center as its default name. Yeah, you could do that instead if you wanted to. Yeah, but I'm going to leave that out because that's not the way we do it by default for these new objects. Instead, we just set it out like this. So let's see whether or not this runs now. Debug start new. So hopefully that runs. Yep, so it's starting up. Right, so we've got these things, and what I'm going to do is, well, if I just choose to move to 0, 0, it goes off to the C somewhere. If I choose to go to 51 lat and 0.8 and move, then it goes to, I'm not sure where that is, somewhere in France, is it? Or is it somewhere in the UK and I'm just not seeing it? Oh yeah, it's somewhere in the UK still. So you can see how that is still there. It's a bit hard to do with the text up. And if I then, change the zoom and I decide to go to, 103, can I do that on lat? No, I can't. That's lat. So if I go to 51, but I decide to go to long 103, then where do I end up? Move. Probably C somewhere. Looks like maybe I've gone off the map. But hopefully you get the idea. I'll go back to something a bit more sensible, 34. And then you can see we are somewhere in... Without looking, it's very hard to find out. Somewhere eastern. So you can see that's how binding has been done for the centre of the map. I'm going to stop there because I've talked long enough. But hopefully what you can see is we've gone from the first sample, which just had those two zombies, Helen and Keith, and allowed you to move them, to a second one which had a zombie which had a draggable pin, to a third one which had a nest, a set that changed and the zombies themselves also moved, to a fourth one that allowed you to kind of change properties on the map. If you wanted two-way binding on that to go back to the text fields, that could also have been done. Would have just required hooking in via the map's delegate to find out when the region changed and things like that. It's kind of fun actually. Maybe I should do that as well. Okay, let's do it. Let's do a fifth one. So we're going to take the fourth view model, going to rename it to fifth, and what we're going to do is just give it a different name. We're not going to have lat and long anymore. We're going to have location, and I'll just do that as a center location. That's all we're going to have in this one. So we don't want the command anymore. So what I'm going to do is in this fifth one, I'm just going to two-way bind the center of the map to this view model property. So let's go, that should build hopefully, because there's not much in there. Let's also take our apps and tell it to start on the fifth view model just for quick debugging. And then what I want to do is here, I will take the fourth view model and copy it across to here. Call it fifth. And so the fifth view, I want to do one last little experiment with. And this last experiment is again, I'm going to use Region Manager. What I'd like to do is, I didn't really use that property, so I'll get rid of that one, is I'd just like to use this fifth view model and fifth view to two-way update as the map moves. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to create back in a delegate, so let's do this. And actually let's make our Region Manager our delegate. Yeah. And what we need to do then, I should probably have a base property, which is going to be, oh no, it doesn't require a map view, so that's cool. So what we can then do is, we don't probably need this center, so let's call this public location R center. That's what we're going to bind to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, so what should I call this? The binding center. That's a, oh no, that's a bad word. A core center. I need a word for this that I can use. Perhaps I shouldn't have used this as the map view delegate. The location, I'll call it for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to override the view, the map. There's like a method that comes in of says when the map has changed. So did change value, you have to look through this, and there's some really good docs about docs. One particularly helpful thing is MapKit 101 and 102 and 103 from Craig. Right, so you've got this region will changed. Yeah, and that's a nice thing, and a region change. So we're going to just override that. So let's override the region changed. And when the region changes, what we're going to do is we are going to fire an event saying the location has changed as well. So let's just do that. Let's have an event, which is going to be an event handler. And call it the location changed. Yeah, and what we're going to do is when the location changes, we're going to fire off this event. So var handler equals new. Sorry, not new, equals the location change. See, I haven't planned this bit at all. If handler is not null, then handler this comma event args dot empty, and that should just fire. So that's going to be called the location changed. It matches the location, so that binding should just work. And then what we just need to do is our region manager now, we don't any longer need to hold a private variable to it. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to pass that to mapView.delegate, and the delegate will hold on to that for us. Right, so that's all done. I'd like to have, the button can be our debug output, so we'll do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind the region managers, and it was the location to the view model's location, and then I'm going to bind the buttons title, and title isn't a real property, so it's one of the pseudo ones again, to the location as well. So that's my 5th view, and basically you can see all I'm doing is using the map view delegate and using this kind of the location and location naming convention to two-way bind it. Hopefully this builds and runs. So if I go over to my MacBook, and this should hopefully run up. And when it does, oh, I've got something wrong. You should not call base in this method. Okay, so that was an override. That's one of these. It's a selector in Objective-C, so you shouldn't really call base in it. Sorry about that. So hopefully it runs this time. And what we should see, I hope, is this kind of two-way binding setup. We may get a feedback loop, which would be interesting, but hopefully not. I perhaps should, check here that my location is actually different. But let's just see. The binding should take care of that. It's pretty good at feedback loops. So this is 51.4 and 0 is my map. If I change it, you can see that the location on the button is also changing. And that is a two-way binding of the map. So again, if you needed to call some geocoding services, or you needed to get houses for sale or something when the map changes, then this would be an event you could hook into. Okay, that really is it for the demo. So we did 5 different things with maps. I will put a quick home view on top of this so that you can navigate between them. I hope that's all made sense to you. Other than that, it's time to move away from iOS and their maps, and perhaps to move on to something new, like perhaps moving on to Droid. Although there's another couple of demos I'd quite like to do, so maybe I'll do those and come back to maps. And I hope that wasn't too confusing for you. So cool, I hope that's reasonable. N = 38 is kind of in the can. Have a good day out there.